Hi everyone, and welcome to our third installment of Conductor in Quarantine series. If you didn't catch what it's all about, I encourage you to take a look at the first video and a little bit of explanation there about what's going on. As always, if you're just interested in the chorale itself, you can fast forward right to the end, and that's where you'll hear it in its entirety. I did want to take a chance here to talk a little bit about text setting, words and music and how they can kind of inform each other. How is the music reflected in the lyrics and vice versa? And it's a little bit of a strange thing for Bach Chorale, since he rarely wrote the melodies and he never wrote the words. He was just putting them together. And so you can get some weird kind of discontinuities. Sometimes you'll get these great situations where, it seems like every note is perfectly designed for the word it's on, and other times maybe the whole idea works really well, but on the local level it's a little bit strange. There are definitely chorales where you get the emphasis on the wrong syllable. But in any case, chorale number 3 does have some really cool things with how the music and the words fit together. So here we have our third chorale from our book. You can see again that it's in open score. All 4 parts are on separate staves, and we have our same 4 clefs: the soprano clef, alto clef, tenor clef, and bass clef. You can see that it's from Cantata 188, Ich habe meine Zuversicht. And these words, again, if you saw the second video, are just the first words that you hear in the cantata, and they won't match these words because these chorales very rarely ever come first. And in fact, in this case, this chorale is the last thing that you hear. It's the common spot for the chorale to be. It's the 6th movement out of 6. And in that second video that I made, I did talk about how you name chorales. Here you will notice that these words, auf meinen lieben Gott, do match, auf meinen lieben Gott. And that's pretty standard in this case. This chorale has been associated, this melody has been associated with those words for a long time, well before Bach used them in this context. As it turns out, there are actually older words that go with it. This is like the chorale from the second video, based on a popular song from the 1500s. But one of the first religious texts to go with this melody was this, auf meinen lieben Gott. And so that's, again, a pretty standard name for this tune that Bach used for this cantata. The kind of theme for this cantata and for the week that it was intended for is, again, like the first chorale that we did, faith in the face of horrible things and adversity. The week that it's intended for in the church year is the 21st week of Trinity, which puts it in the October-November range. So our German here, if you follow our text, is, upon my dear God, I trust in anxiety and need. He can always deliver me from grief, anxiety, and needs, plural. My misfortune he can turn, and everything stands in his hands. So let's take a look at how the words and the music, the melody, and Bach's harmonization kind of support each other. Right off the bat, we have upon my dear God. We have a very simple but effective technique, this melody. A very simple ascending scale that it's essentially like the tune is casting its eyes upwards towards heaven. Now in this next phrase, I trust in anxiety and need, we have a glorious moment on this word angst, which means angst, anxiousness or fear. We have a B in the alto part and a C in the soprano part. I know might be unfamiliar clefs, but trust me on that one. And of course a B and a C together sound like this. It's about as anxious as you can get. next phrase, he can always save me. You know, for centuries in the Western world, minor has meant sad and unhappy stuff, and major has meant better, happier stuff. And during the course of this phrase, while we're being saved, we start in A minor, and by the end of it, we've made it all the way to C major. In our next phrase, we're talking about what we are saved from. So we're still being saved. We actually stay in C major to the end of this next little bit. But this is the gnarly stuff. You'll see more chromatics in the bass part, faster notes. This is where the kind of work and the difficulty of working through those things comes in. Now this next phrase, my misfortune he can turn, two glorious things here. First of all, we go up to a high G in the soprano part, which gives it a little bit of extra tension on the word Unglück. Again, that's misfortune, unhappiness. And that's certainly, that high G for your more reluctant sopranos is definitely going to feel a little bit unfortunate. But this moment is also brilliant. The word wenden means turn, and you can see just how much these lower three parts are turning. The alto, your tenor, and your bass. And all of that is happening all at the same time. So even though the melody is not turning at all, right, it's just hanging out on a D forever and ever, there's a lot of churn that's happening underneath that. And then finally, it all stands in his hands. And I'll play this one first. And you hear that we end on that major chord, that A major, when we've been in A minor, though most of the time. You'll actually, if you look through this book at all the chorales that happen, every single chorale, whether it's in major or minor, will end in major. And there's something about sort of coming to peace through difficulty that last major chord, they call it a Picardy third, sort of brings to it. If we don't do that, this is how it sounds without that C sharp with a minor chord at the end. Just that one note, turning that C sharp into a C natural, makes it a much more kind of pessimistic ending. And of course, that's not what we're going for here. We're hope in the face of despair, not despair in the face of despair. So let's put that all together. Here it is without the words. And with the text.